The giant alien ships appeared in Earth's sky like dark clouds covering the sun. Commander Lee Taman stood in the control room, watching the screens that showed 200 warships surrounding his home planet. Each ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their metal hulls gleamed with strange lights, and weapons that could destroy cities pointed down at Earth. Taman was 45 years old and had spent his whole life preparing for this moment. He knew this day would come. For the past 10 years, reports had reached Earth about the Galactic Coalition. World after world had fallen to these aliens. They would arrive, show their power, and demand surrender. Every species had given up within hours. Today was Earth's turn. The communication screen buzzed to life. A tall alien figure appeared, wearing armor that seemed to be made of living metal. His skin was gray like stone, and his eyes burned with yellow fire. This was General Kivtar, the Coalition's most feared commander. He had conquered 47 worlds without losing a single battle. People of Earth, the alien general spoke in perfect English. I am General Kivtar of the Galactic Coalition. Your planet is now under Coalition control. You have 24 hours to surrender completely. Lay down all weapons. Disband your military forces. Accept our rule without question. The general paused and smiled coldly. If you refuse, we will destroy your cities one by one until nothing remains. We have done this to 846 worlds. Not one has ever refused our offer. Do not be the first to choose death over wisdom. Taman looked around the control room. Dr. Park Nayan, Earth's top scientist, gave him a small nod. Captain Kim Woo-jin, leader of their best fighter pilots, crossed his arms and scowled at the screen. Major Yu Hana, who ran the orbital defense stations, simply waited for orders. These people had worked together for years. They had prepared for this exact moment. While other worlds had tried to build bigger weapons or stronger shields, Earth had done something different. They had studied the Coalition. They had learned how these aliens fought, how they thought, and most importantly, why they always won. Taman stepped forward to face the screen. He knew his next words would change everything, not just for Earth but for the entire galaxy. General Kivtar, Taman said calmly, we have heard your offer. We have considered it carefully. Our answer is no. The alien general's eyes widened. For a moment he said nothing. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. In 800 years of conquest, no one had ever said no to the Coalition. What did you say? Kivtar finally managed to speak. We decline your generous offer, Taman repeated. Earth will remain free. We will not surrender. We will not lay down our weapons. We will not accept your rule. Is there anything else you would like to discuss? The alien general's face turned darker. His yellow eyes blazed brighter. You do not understand what you are doing. We have weapons that can crack planets in half. We have technology your primitive minds cannot imagine. We have conquered species far more advanced than you. Dr. Nayan stepped up beside Taman. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but her voice was steady and strong. General, we understand perfectly. You have big ships and powerful weapons. You can destroy cities and kill millions. But you cannot make us surrender. That choice belongs to us, and we choose to fight. Kivtar's rage was growing. His hands clenched into fists. You cannot fight us. Your weapons are toys compared to ours. Your ships are made of metal and circuits while ours think and adapt. You have no chance. Captain Woo-jin laughed. Maybe we don't have a chance. Maybe you'll kill us all. But we'll make you work for it. Every ship you lose, every soldier that dies, every day this takes longer than expected, the whole galaxy will know that humans fought back. The alien general stared at them in disbelief. You would choose death over life? Destruction over peace? Why? Taman smiled for the first time since the ships had arrived. Because, General, you made one mistake. You gave us a choice. And humans, when given the choice between freedom and slavery, will always choose freedom, even if it kills us. Major Hana activated her console. General, your 24-hour deadline is noted. When you're ready to attack, we'll be waiting. But I should warn you, we've spent 10 years preparing for this moment. We know things about your weapons that might surprise you. Kivtar's image flickered as his rage grew stronger. Impossible. You primitive creatures know nothing. Tomorrow when the sun rises, your world will burn. The transmission ended. The control room fell silent for a moment. Then Dr. Nayan spoke quietly. Phase 1 complete. He's angry and confused. Angry enemies make mistakes, Taman nodded. How long before they attack? 6 hours, Major Hana reported, checking her screens. They're moving into attack formation now. Just like we expected. Captain Wu Jin cracked his knuckles. My pilots are ready. We've trained for this our whole lives. Dr. Nyan pulled up a holographic display showing Earth's defenses. The energy dispersion fields are online. The mirror satellites are in position. Most importantly, the Coalition still thinks we're just another primitive world with primitive weapons. They're about to learn otherwise, Taman said. 6 hours later, the Coalition attack began. 200 warships opened fire at once. Beams of pure energy lanced down from space, enough power to melt mountains. Plasma cannons that had shattered the defenses of 1,000 worlds fired their deadly loads at Earth's cities. But something was wrong. The energy beams struck Earth's atmosphere and began to scatter. Instead of burning straight through to the ground, they spread out like water hitting a window. The plasma blasts hit invisible barriers and broke apart into harmless light shows. On the Coalition command ship, General Kivtar stared at his screens in shock. What is happening? Why aren't our weapons working? His officers scrambled to check their systems. All weapons are functioning normally, sir, but the energy is being dispersed somehow. It's like the humans have turned their entire atmosphere into a shield. Major Hana smiled as she watched her orbital defense stations work perfectly. While other worlds had tried to build walls to stop Coalition weapons, humans had built something different. They had created fields that didn't block the energy. They spread it out and sent it harmlessly into space. The Coalition tried again. More ships joined the attack. Energy weapons that could melt steel fired down at Earth. But each blast was caught, scattered, and redirected away from the planet. Dr. Nayon monitored the defense systems from her laboratory. It's working perfectly. Their weapons are designed to punch through solid barriers. They can't handle adaptive dispersion fields. Captain Wu Jin launched his fighters. 50 small ships rose from Earth to meet the massive alien fleet. The Coalition sent their own fighters to stop them. Sleek ships controlled by artificial intelligence, programmed with the combat data from 1,000 victories. But the human pilots did something the alien computers couldn't understand. They flew in patterns that made no sense. They attacked from impossible angles. They worked together in ways that seemed random but were actually brilliant. The alien fighters, programmed to respond to logical tactics, couldn't adapt to human chaos. One by one, they fell to pilots who thought with their hearts instead of their computers. General Kivtar watched his perfect weapons fail against these primitive humans. His rage grew hotter. For the first time in his long career, an enemy was not just surviving his attack, they were winning. Sir, one of his officers reported nervously, we're receiving messages from across Coalition space. Other worlds are asking about the humans. Word is spreading that someone is fighting back. Kivtar's yellow eyes burned brighter. This could not be allowed to continue. If other species learned that the Coalition could be resisted, everything would fall apart. He had to crush these humans quickly and completely. But as he prepared for a second attack deep in his mind, a small voice whispered a terrible question. What if the humans were right? What if there was another way? He crushed that voice with his rage. Tomorrow he would show these humans the true power of the Coalition. Tomorrow Earth would burn. General Kivtar paced back and forth on his command ship like a caged animal. His yellow eyes burned with fury as he stared at the blue planet below. No species had ever made him wait for victory. No enemy had ever turned his own weapons into light shows in the sky. Status report, he growled at his officers. Admiral Vexmore, his second-in-command, looked nervous. Sir, our first wave accomplished nothing. The humans somehow scattered our energy weapons. Their fighters destroyed 30 of our drones using impossible tactics. Impossible? Kivtar's voice rose dangerously. Nothing is impossible for the Coalition. We have conquered 846 worlds. Yes, sir, but no buts. Kivtar slammed his fist on the control panel. Ready the world breaker formation. If these primitives want to see real power, we'll show them what happens when an entire planet dies. On Earth's orbital defense station, Major Yuhana watched the alien ships move into new positions. She had short black hair and calm brown eyes, but her hands moved quickly across her controls as she prepared for the next attack. They're forming the world breaker pattern, she reported to Commander Taman, just like Dr. Nayon predicted. Are you ready? Taman asked. Hana smiled grimly. We've been ready for this since we first heard about the Coalition. Activating mirror protocol in 3, 2, 1. Around Earth, thousands of small satellites that looked like space junk suddenly came to life. They had been floating in orbit for years, disguised as broken communication relays and old weather stations. Now they revealed their true purpose. Each satellite unfolded like a metal flower, revealing mirrors that gleamed like diamonds. In seconds, Earth was surrounded by a shell of reflecting surfaces, all aimed at the Coalition fleet. Corporal Shin Minho sat in the communication center, listening to alien radio chatter. He was young and eager, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Suddenly he sat up straight. "Commander," he called out, "I'm picking up something strange in their communications. They're not adapting their tactics. Every order is exactly the same as their standard attack patterns." Dr. Nyan, monitoring from her laboratory, nodded thoughtfully. "Of course. They've never needed to adapt before. Every species surrendered after the first demonstration of force. What does that mean for us?" Taman asked. "It means they only know one way to fight," Nyan replied. "Overwhelming force and predictable patterns. They're like a hammer that only knows how to hit nails." Above Earth, the Coalition fleet prepared their deadliest attack. The Worldbreaker formation had destroyed planets before. Every ship would fire at once, concentrating enough energy to crack a world's crust and boil its oceans. "Target the largest population centers," General Kivtar ordered. "When their cities turn to glass, the survivors will beg to surrender." "Sir," Admiral Vexmore said quietly, "perhaps we should consider..." "Consider what?" Kivtar snapped. "The humans fought back, sir. In 800 years, no one has ever fought back. Maybe we should ask ourselves why." Kivtar's eyes blazed. "Because they're too stupid to know they're beaten. Fire all weapons. Burn their world to ash." 200 warships fired at once. The energy released was enough to power a star. Beams of pure destruction lanced down at Earth's cities, promising death for millions of innocent people. But as the deadly light struck Earth's mirror satellites, something beautiful and terrible happened. The energy bounced. Every beam, every blast, every killing ray was reflected back at the ships that had fired it. The Coalition had never faced their own weapons before. Their shields were designed to stop enemy attacks, not their own energy signatures. Ship after ship was struck by its own firepower. Explosions bloomed like flowers in the darkness of space. Coalition vessels, built to deal destruction, found themselves burning and breaking apart. Escape pods launched as crews abandoned their dying ships. On the command ship, alarms screamed. Admiral Vexmore stared at his screens in disbelief. "Sir, we've lost 30 ships. Our own weapons are destroying us." General Kivtar could not speak. His perfect weapons, his unstoppable fleet, his guaranteed victory, all of it was falling apart because of mirrors. Simple, primitive mirrors. Captain Kim Woojin launched his fighters again, leading them through the chaos of burning Coalition ships. His pilots whooped and cheered as they flew past alien vessels trying to put out fires and rescue their crews. "Look at them," Woojin said over his radio. "They don't know how to handle damage. They don't know how to adapt. They're like children who've never been in a real fight." His fighters swooped through the Coalition formation not to attack, but to observe. They watched alien ships collide with each other as their formations broke apart. They saw rescue teams struggling with procedures they had never needed before. "They're confused," reported Lieutenant Park Jamin, one of Woojin's best pilots. "Their computers keep trying to follow attack patterns, but half their targets are their own burning ships." Dr. Nyan watched the battle from Earth and made notes. "Fascinating. They're so used to quick victories that they never developed damage control procedures. They don't know how to fight a long battle." Commander Taman felt a moment of sadness as he watched Coalition ships burn. "Major Hana, open a channel to their fleet." "Channel open, sir." "General Kivtar, this is Commander Taman. We offer immediate rescue assistance for your damaged ships. We have no wish to see beings die unnecessarily." The response was immediate and filled with rage. "We need nothing from you, primitive." "This battle is not over," Taman sighed. "The offer remains open. We are not your enemies, General. We simply refuse to be your slaves." The transmission ended. General Kivtar was breathing heavily, his hands shaking with fury. Admiral Vexmore watched his commander with growing concern. "Sir," Vexmore said carefully, "we've lost 40 ships now. The humans are offering to help our wounded. Perhaps what?" Kivtar's voice was deadly quiet. "Perhaps we should consider their offer. Not surrender, but dialogue." Kivtar turned on his second-in-command. Dialogue? With primitives who use mirrors as weapons? With creatures who dare to defy the coalition? Sir, they've hurt us badly. No species has ever hurt us before. Maybe they're not as primitive as we thought. For a moment, something flickered in Kivtar's yellow eyes. Doubt. Fear. The possibility that everything he believed might be wrong. Then his rage returned, hotter than ever. Ready the psychic suppression array. If their technology surprises us, we'll attack their minds directly. No species can resist our mental weapons. But even as he gave the order, Vexmore noticed something troubling. The crew was asking questions they had never asked before. Why are we here? Who decided these humans should surrender? What gives us the right? The battle for Earth had done more than damage coalition ships. It had cracked something deeper, the absolute certainty that had held the coalition together for 800 years. On Earth, Corporal Minho detected the psychic arrays powering up. They're preparing mental attacks, he reported. Dr. Nayan smiled. Let them try. They're about to discover that human stubbornness isn't just an attitude, it's practically a superpower. Major Hana prepared the planetary defenses for a new kind of battle. All personnel prepare for psychic assault. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Remember that no one can make you surrender if you don't want to. General Kivtar activated the psychic suppression array, confident that this would end the human resistance. The weapon had broken the will of entire species in minutes. But as the mental attack reached Earth, something unprecedented happened. Instead of submission, the coalition felt something flowing back through their own psychic network. Human determination. Human defiance. The simple, powerful idea that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. And across the coalition fleet, for the first time in 800 years, individual minds began to wake up and ask the most dangerous question of all. Why? Engineer Choi Sun-woo worked deep underground in a laboratory that officially didn't exist. He was tall and thin, with hands that always seemed to be covered in machine oil. Around him, screens showed data that would have seemed impossible to anyone from the coalition. Dr. Nayan, he called out as she entered his workshop. The viral weapons are ready. Nayan looked at the devices he had built. They looked like simple computer chips, but she knew they contained something far more dangerous than any explosive. You're certain they'll work? Sun-woo nodded. We captured enough coalition nanites during their first attack. I've programmed them with human concepts, creativity, doubt, individual choice. When these reach their computer systems, their whole network will crash, Nayan finished. Not from damage, but from ideas they can't process. Above ground, Lieutenant Commander Bayek Jiwon sat in the intelligence center, her headphones crackling with coalition radio chatter. She was small and quiet, but her mind worked like a computer finding patterns others missed. Commander Taemin? She called out excitedly. I've broken their communication codes. You need to hear this, Taemin hurried over. What have you found? Jiwon played back a recording. General Kivtar's voice filled the room, but he sounded different now. Strained, worried. High Command, this is General Kivtar. The human resistance continues. Request immediate reinforcements. Another voice replied, cold and mechanical. General, your report is impossible. No species resists beyond the first demonstration of power. I am telling you, they refuse to surrender. Their weapons reflect our own energy back at us. They show no fear of our psychic attacks. General Kivtar, you will complete your mission within 48 hours or you will be replaced. The transmission ended. Jiwon removed her headphones. Sir, they don't know how to handle this. Their entire system depends on quick victories. A long fight breaks everything they understand. Meanwhile, on the Coalition command ship, Admiral Vexmore was experiencing something he had never felt before. Doubt. He stood at his station, watching the screens that showed Earth still turning freely in space. Still defended, still defiant, sir, he said quietly to General Kivtar. Permission to speak freely. Kivtar's yellow eyes were dimmer now, tired from rage and confusion. Speak. In 800 years, we have never faced resistance. Every world surrendered immediately. But these humans, Vexmore paused. What if they're not wrong? What if we're the ones who don't understand? Kivtar turned slowly. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe the reason no one ever fought back wasn't because we're invincible. Maybe it was because they were afraid. But fear and strength aren't the same thing. For a moment, Kivtar said nothing. Then his rage flared again. You doubt our cause? You question the coalition? But even as he spoke, Vexmore noticed something troubling. Other officers were listening, and in their eyes he saw the same doubt that was growing in his own heart. On Earth, Dr. Nayan prepared to launch humanity's most dangerous weapon. Not a bomb or a gun, but an idea. She stood before a massive transmitter that could broadcast across the entire galaxy. Are you ready? Commander Taman asked. As ready as one can be to change the universe, she replied. Sunwoo's viral programs are loaded. When we broadcast, every coalition computer system will receive something they've never encountered before. Which is choice, the simple idea that beings can say no. That obedience isn't natural. That there might be another way to live. She pressed the activation button. Across space, the signal raced toward coalition ships and worlds. It carried human music, human art, human philosophy. But most importantly, it carried the human concept of resistance. On coalition ships throughout the galaxy, computer systems began to malfunction. Not from damage, but from processing ideas they couldn't understand. Crew members who had followed orders without question their entire lives suddenly found themselves thinking new thoughts. Sub-Commander Kelvash, on a coalition patrol ship near the Vegan system, stared at his console in confusion. Strange images flickered on his screen. Humans laughing, humans creating art, humans choosing their own paths in life. What is this? He asked his captain, but his captain was staring at the same images. I don't know, but it makes me feel different. Around them, other crew members were experiencing the same thing. The absolute certainty that had guided their lives was cracking, replaced by questions they had never dared to ask. Back at Earth, High Counselor Thexnall, leader of the coalition government, watched reports flood in from across their territory. On his main screen, dozens of red warning lights appeared as world after world reported system malfunctions. What is happening? He demanded. His aide, trembling with fear, replied, The humans have broadcast something, Your Supremacy. Some kind of signal that's affecting our computer networks. A virus? Not exactly. Our systems aren't being destroyed. They're being changed. Personnel are reporting strange thoughts. Some are even questioning their orders. Thexnell felt a chill run through his body. The one thing the coalition feared most was not defeat in battle, but the awakening of individual thought among their subjects. Activate the Star Killer, he ordered. His aide went pale. Your Supremacy, the Star Killer has never been used. It will destroy the entire human solar system. Then no one will ever again think that resistance is possible. On Earth, Jung Daeho sat in the diplomatic center, coordinating with the awakening minds across the galaxy. He was older than the others, with gray hair and wise eyes. His job was to turn individual doubt into organized resistance. Status report, Commander Taman asked him. 17 worlds have stopped following coalition orders, Jung replied. 43 more are showing signs of resistance. The virus is spreading faster than we hoped. And the coalition's response? Jung's face grew serious. They're preparing something called the Star Killer. Our deep space monitors show massive energy building up in their command ship. Dr. Nayan felt her blood turn cold. The Star Killer destroys entire star systems. They'd rather commit genocide than let the idea of resistance spread. Civilian leader Han Minji, who represented Earth's non-military population, spoke up. Then we broadcast again. If they're willing to destroy billions of lives to stop an idea, then that idea must be more powerful than we realized. She was right. Across coalition space, the impossible was happening. On world after world, beings who had been slaves for centuries were remembering what it felt like to choose. The Kethlar, a species of natural shapeshifters, began using their abilities to hide from coalition overseers instead of serving them. The Vordum, master engineers, started sabotaging the weapons they had been forced to build. The Yulnari, with their natural psychic abilities, began disrupting coalition control networks. General Kivtar watched his perfect empire crumble on every screen. His rage had burned so hot for so long that it was consuming him from within, but underneath the rage, something else was growing. Fear. Admiral Vexmore, he called out. His second-in-command approached cautiously. Yes, sir? Tell me truthfully. Have we been wrong all this time? Vexmore looked around the command bridge. Every officer was listening. The question hung in the air like smoke. Sir, Vexmore said carefully, I think we've been so afraid of being questioned that we forgot to question ourselves. Kivtar nodded slowly. The Star Killer is ready? Yes, sir. But General, if we use it, we become exactly what the humans said we were. Destroyers, murderers, everything they refuse to bow down to. For a long moment, General Kivtar stared at the weapon controls. One button press would end the human rebellion forever. It would also prove that everything they had fought against was true. Around him, his officers waited. On Earth, billions of humans prepared for death. Across the galaxy, newly awakened minds held their breath. The choice, for the first time in 800 years, was his to make. But as he reached for the controls, his communication system crackled to life. A new voice spoke. Not angry, not commanding, but sad and tired. General Kivtar, this is Commander Taman. We know about the Star Killer. We're not calling to beg for our lives. We're calling to tell you something important. Speak, Kivtar whispered. You have a choice too, General. You can be the destroyer, or you can be something more. The choice was always yours. We just reminded you that it existed. General Kivtar's hand hovered over the weapon controls. Around him, the entire coalition fleet waited to see what kind of being their leader truly was. General Kivtar's hand trembled as it hovered over the Star Killer controls. Around him, the bridge had fallen completely silent. Every officer watched their commander struggle with a choice they had never seen him make before. The choice to choose. Sir? Admiral Vexmore whispered. Kivtar pulled his hand back. Stand down the Star Killer. A collective breath was released across the bridge. For the first time in 800 years, a coalition general had chosen mercy over destruction. But the damage was already done. Across coalition space, the Earth virus spread like wildfire. The simple idea that surrender was optional had reached thousands of worlds, awakening minds that had been sleeping for centuries. Jung Daeho worked around the clock in Earth's diplomatic center, coordinating with resistance movements that were springing up across the galaxy. His screen showed messages pouring in from worlds whose names he couldn't even pronounce. The Kethalar have taken control of 3 coalition supply stations, he reported to Commander Taman. The Vordum have shut down weapon production on 15 factory worlds. And the Yulnari, and he paused, amazed. The Yulnari have turned their psychic abilities against the coalition's control networks. They're freeing entire populations just by thinking at them. Taman nodded grimly. What about coalition forces? Are they holding together? That's the interesting part, Jung replied. They're not. Sub-commanders are refusing orders. Entire ships are going dark. Some are even asking to defect. It was true. Sub-Commander Kelvash, who had first seen the human broadcasts, now stood on the bridge of his patrol ship facing a terrible decision. His captain had ordered him to fire on a rebel transport carrying Kethlar refugees. Sub-Commander, you have your orders, the captain said. Kelvash looked at his weapon controls, then at the view screen showing the transport ship. Inside were families. Parents, children, elderly beings who had lived their whole lives under coalition rule and were now seeking freedom. No, he said quietly. The captain spun around. What did you say? I said no. Kelvash's voice grew stronger. I won't fire on refugees. I won't kill people whose only crime was wanting to choose their own lives. Around the bridge, other crew members nodded. The Earth virus had reached them too. The captain reached for his sidearm, but his security chief gently placed a hand on his wrist. Captain, maybe it's time we listen to what our hearts are telling us. Similar scenes played out across the coalition fleet. The rigid discipline that had held their empire together for 8 centuries was cracking like ice in spring. On Earth, civilian leader Han Minji prepared for another broadcast. She was a teacher before the war, used to speaking to children. Now she would speak to an entire galaxy that was learning to think like children again, with wonder, questions, and hope. People of the galaxy, she began, her voice carried by transmitters to every coalition world. My name is Han Minji. I'm not a soldier or a politician. I'm just someone who believes that every thinking being has the right to choose their own path. Her words were translated into thousands of languages and broadcast to billions of awakening minds. The coalition has told you that order requires obedience, that peace demands surrender, that safety comes from having no choices at all. But look around you now. Are you at peace? Are you safe? Or are you just empty? Across coalition space, beings stopped what they were doing to listen. We humans aren't special. We're not stronger or smarter or better than you. We just remembered something simple, that the word no is the foundation of all freedom. You don't need permission to think your own thoughts. You don't need approval to dream your own dreams. On the Coalition Capital World, High Counselor Thexnal watched his empire dissolve in real time. Red warning lights covered his command screens as world after world stopped responding to orders. How many? He asked his aide. 74 worlds in open rebellion. 112 more have gone silent. Our military commanders are requesting permission to negotiate ceasefires. Thexnal felt something he had never experienced before. Helplessness. Deploy the reserve fleets. Use force to restore order. But his aide shook his head sadly. Your Supremacy, the reserve fleets are asking the same questions as everyone else. Half of them have refused to deploy. The other half are demanding to know why we never tried talking instead of conquering. The unthinkable had happened. The coalition, built on absolute obedience, was facing an enemy it couldn't defeat. Its own people thinking for themselves. Back on Kivtar's command ship, Admiral Vexmore brought disturbing reports. Sir, we're receiving surrender requests from coalition facilities across 17 systems. But they're not surrendering to us, they're surrendering to the rebels. Kivtar, his rage now replaced by exhaustion, asked, What do they want? To join the resistance. They want to be free, General. They want what the humans have. And what is it that humans have? Vexmore smiled for the first time in decades. Hope, sir. They have hope. Engineer Choi Sunwoo, working in his underground laboratory, watched his viral programs spread through coalition networks. But something unexpected was happening. The programs weren't just disrupting coalition systems, they were improving them. Dr. Neon, he called excitedly, look at this data. The coalition's computers are running better now than they ever did before. Neon studied his screens. How is that possible? The human concepts we introduced, creativity, individual choice, collaborative thinking, they're not viruses at all. They're upgrades. The coalition systems were so focused on control that they wasted enormous amounts of processing power. Now that their computers can think freely, they're solving problems faster and more efficiently. It was a perfect metaphor for what was happening galaxy-wide. Worlds that had stagnated under coalition rule were suddenly blooming with creativity and innovation. Art, music, literature, and scientific discovery exploded across hundreds of civilizations as beings remembered what it felt like to create instead of just obey. Lieutenant, Commander Baek Jiwon intercepted a message that made her call Commander Taemin immediately. Sir, you need to hear this. It's from a coalition prison world called Kavthul. They've freed all their political prisoners and are requesting Earth's help in establishing a democratic government. Democratic? Taemin asked. They learned the word from our broadcasts. Apparently the concept of people choosing their own leaders is spreading as fast as the idea of resistance itself. Dr. Neon shook her head in amazement. We didn't just start a rebellion, we started a renaissance. But not everyone in the coalition accepted the changes. Hardline commanders loyal to the old ways began gathering forces for a final push against the growing rebellion. They saw the awakening minds not as liberation, but as a disease to be cured. General Kivtar received orders from High Command. Restore order by any means necessary. Destroy rebel worlds if needed. The coalition must survive. He looked at the orders, then at his bridge crew. Every face showed the same mixture of hope and fear that he felt in his own heart. Admiral Vexmore, he said quietly, what would happen if we joined them instead of fighting them? Vexmore's eyes widened. Sir, that would be treason. Yes, Kivtar nodded. Treason against everything we used to be, but loyalty to everything we could become. Around the bridge, officers nodded. The decision was unanimous without a single vote being cast. General Kivtar opened a communication channel to Earth. Commander Taemin, this is General Kivtar. I am requesting terms of surrender. Surrender, General? Not just mine. I speak for my entire fleet. We want to join your cause. We want to learn how to choose, Taemin smiled. General, there are no terms needed. Freedom isn't something you surrender to. It's something you surrender for. As word of Kivtar's defection spread, the last organized resistance to the rebellion crumbled. Coalition commanders across the galaxy faced the same choice. Fight for the old ways and become the monsters their subjects believed them to be, or join the greatest transformation in galactic history. Most chose transformation, But the real test was yet to come. It was one thing to tear down an empire built on oppression. It would be quite another to build something better in its place. On Earth, as reports of victory poured in from across the galaxy, Commander Taman stood at his window looking up at the stars. Each point of light now represented a world learning to be free. "It's beautiful," Dr. Nayan said, joining him at the window. "And terrifying," Taman replied. "Freedom is easy to want but hard to use wisely. Now the real work begins." 6 months had passed since the last coalition warship lowered its weapons. The galaxy looked completely different now. Where once there had been one massive empire controlling everything, now hundreds of worlds worked together by choice rather than force. Ambassador Park Hyunwoo stood in what used to be the coalition's Grand Assembly Hall. The building remained the same, but everything else had changed. Instead of silent, obedient representatives, the hall buzzed with conversation, debate, and sometimes argument. It was the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. "The Kethler delegation wants to know about trade agreements," his assistant reported. "The Vordum are asking for help setting up their first elections, and the Yulnari want to discuss establishing a galactic communication network based on choice instead of control." Hyunwoo smiled. "Schedule meetings with all of them, and remind them that they don't need our permission for anything. They're free to make their own decisions." That was the hardest part for many species to understand. After centuries of having every choice made for them, freedom felt strange and scary. Some worlds asked Earth to rule them, not understanding that the whole point was for them to rule themselves. Unity Coordinator Kim Soyeon worked tirelessly to help new governments form across the galaxy. She was young and energetic with bright eyes that saw potential everywhere. Her job was to teach beings who had never voted how to choose their own leaders. "How do we know if our choice is right?" asked a delegate from the Vordum homeworld. "You don't," Soyeon replied honestly. "That's what makes it a choice. If you knew the answer ahead of time, you wouldn't need to choose. But here's the secret. If you make a bad choice, you can choose again later." It was a revolutionary concept to beings who had lived under the Coalition's permanent decisions. Meanwhile, former General Kivtar underwent the most difficult transformation of all. On Earth, he met regularly with Commander Taman, trying to understand how beings could work together without someone being in charge of everyone else. "I spent my whole life giving orders," Kivtar said during one of their talks. His yellow eyes were different now, softer, more confused but also more alive. "I don't know how to live without knowing exactly what everyone should do." Taman poured tea for both of them, a human custom that Kivtar was learning to appreciate. The hardest part of freedom isn't making choices for yourself. It's letting other people make choices you disagree with. But what if they're wrong? Then they'll learn from being wrong. Or maybe they're right and we're wrong. The only way to find out is to let everyone try their ideas and see what works. Kivtar shook his head. "Your species is very strange. You seem to enjoy not knowing things. We call it curiosity." Taman smiled. "It's what makes life interesting." Dr. Nayan's research had taken an unexpected turn. Instead of studying weapons, she now studied something far more complex: how different species learn to cooperate when they didn't have to. "The results are remarkable," she reported to the new Galactic Cooperation Council. "Productivity is up 300% across former coalition worlds. Scientific discoveries are happening daily. Art, music, and literature are flourishing everywhere." "Why?" asked a delegate from a world that had been conquered so long ago they had forgotten their original name. "Because when people work together by choice, they bring their creativity with them. The coalition suppressed creativity because creative people ask uncomfortable questions. Now that questioning is encouraged, innovation follows naturally." It was true. The galaxy was experiencing a renaissance unlike anything in recorded history. Technologies that the coalition had kept secret for centuries were shared freely. Artistic movements spread from world to world, creating new forms of expression that mixed different species' perspectives. The Kethler's shape-shifting abilities led to sculpture that changed form based on the viewer's emotions. The Vordim's engineering skills combined with Yulnari psychic sensitivity to create cities that adapted to their inhabitants' needs. Human music mixed with alien harmonies created songs that touched hearts across hundreds of different species. But not everything was perfect. Some worlds struggled with their new freedom. On the former coalition world of Texnari, civil war broke out as different groups fought over who should lead. Jung Daeho, now serving as a diplomatic mediator, traveled to Texnari to help resolve the conflict. You can't all be in charge at the same time, one faction leader argued. Why not? Jung asked. The leader stared at him. Because someone has to make the final decisions. Who says? What if instead of one leader making all the decisions, different people made decisions about different things? What if the person best at farming made decisions about farming, and the person best at engineering made decisions about building? It took weeks of patient discussion, but eventually the Texanari developed their own unique form of government, a council where leadership rotated based on the issue being discussed. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs. Similar experiments happened across the galaxy. Some worlds chose democracy like Earth. Others developed systems based on consensus, expertise, or rotation. A few tried to keep their old hierarchies but make them voluntary. Beings could choose to follow leaders, but leaders couldn't force obedience. Admiral Vexmore, now calling himself simply Vexmore, established a school for former coalition officers who wanted to learn how to serve instead of command. The hardest part, he told his students, is remembering that your job is to help others achieve their goals, not to make them achieve yours. Many former coalition personnel struggled with this concept. They had been trained from birth to believe that their way was the only right way. Learning to respect other perspectives took time and patience, but slowly, gradually it worked. Former enemies became friends. Conquerors became helpers. The galaxy learned to work together in ways the coalition had never allowed. Captain Kim Woo-jin, now leading a volunteer patrol fleet, focused on protecting the new freedoms rather than conquering new worlds. His ships carried teachers instead of weapons, helping newly free worlds establish their own defenses. The trick, he explained to his pilots, is to be strong enough that no one can take away their choices, but not so strong that we become the ones making choices for them. It was a delicate balance, but it worked. Pirates and raiders found it much harder to attack worlds that could call on friends for help, rather than waiting for orders from distant commanders. As the first year of the new galaxy came to an end, Ambassador Hyunwoo organized a celebration unlike any that had ever been held. Representatives from over 400 worlds gathered on Earth to share their cultures, their stories, and their hopes for the future. Former General Kivtar attended as well, no longer wearing his armor but simple clothes that made him look almost human. Commander Taemin, he said during the celebration, I need to ask you something. Of course, how did you know? How did you know that saying no would lead to all this? He gestured at the gathering around them, beings from hundreds of worlds talking, laughing, and planning together. Taemin considered the question carefully. We didn't know. We just knew that living on our knees wasn't really living at all. Everything else, we discovered along the way. And if we had destroyed you, if the Star Killer had worked, then the galaxy would have learned a different lesson. That freedom dies hard, but it does die. Maybe that lesson would have been valuable too, in its own dark way. Kivtar nodded slowly. Your rage was louder than mine, wasn't it? My rage came from fear of losing control. But yours came from love of choice itself. Fear makes you hold on tighter, Taemin agreed. Love makes you let go and see what happens. Dr. Neon, now an old woman, gave the keynote speech at the celebration. She spoke about the science of freedom, the research into cooperation, and the discoveries that happened when minds were allowed to think without limits. We learned something important, she said to the gathered delegates. The strongest force in the universe isn't gravity or nuclear power or psychic energy. It's the simple idea that things can be better than they are. Every being who chooses hope over despair, creation over destruction, cooperation over domination, they become part of that force. As the celebration continued, young beings from different worlds played together, their games mixing rules from dozens of different cultures. They had no memory of the coalition's oppression, no fear of making choices. To them, freedom was simply how the universe worked. Commander Taemin, now elderly and walking with a cane, watched the children play and smiled. A young cadet approached him, a Vordum who had joined Earth's diplomatic corps. Commander, the cadet asked, what was the secret? How did humans defeat the coalition when no one else could? Taemin chuckled. There was no secret, young one. We didn't defeat them because we were stronger or smarter. We defeated them because we remembered something they forgot. What? That every thinking being has the right to say no, and sometimes that's all the weapon you need. The celebration lasted for days, with stories shared, Friendships formed, and plans made for an even better future. But the most important moment came when former General Kivtar, standing before the assembled delegates, made a simple announcement. "I have been thinking," he said, his voice carrying across the great hall.